Welcome to the Omnibus Show, a program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. And now your host, Dave Gibbs.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Omnibus Show, the program for people who are interested in everything, with deep conversations on a wide variety of subjects. Today's guest is Shelby Wilson, an American wrestler and Olympian champion. He's a native of Ponca City, Oklahoma, where he went on to wrestle in high school and in college at Oklahoma State University, and then on to the Olympics in 1960 in Rome, where he won the gold medal. In 1982, Shelby was inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame as a distinguished member. He has been a coach, and he's also the president of the Stronghold Foundation. Welcome, Shelby. It's good to have you here today.
Thank you, Dave.
That's great. Now, I'm sure the listeners, when they hear an Olympic champion and gold medalist, they love to hear the story. Can you tell us your pathway to the Olympics?
Well, you want to know the very beginning and all the way up?
Well, we'll start with what got you into wrestling.
Well, I was a farm kid. Grew up south of, south of Ponca City. Ponca is taken the name from the Ponca Indians. Mm-hmm. That tribe of Indians was escorted to Oklahoma. Oklahoma was just barren, and now if you see a map, it's just, you can see where the Indians were placed, and I grew up on that reservation.
Okay.
My buddies and all were all Indian kids and all. But in the 7th grade, I went to junior high school, and we were bussed in, and the PE teacher happened to be the assistant wrestling coach. And I'm 72 pounds, dripping wet. And he throws out the mats for that section of teaching.
Sure.
And I guess he thought I had potential, and he said, "Why don't you go out for wrestling?" I knew nothing about, no one in my family had been out for athletics ever, mm-hmm. And we knew nothing about wrestling, although we lived 3.5 miles outside of town and probably had seen it in the newspaper. We worked, we worked on the farm, and that's how I got started. I just went out for wrestling, and actually, this is how unknowing I was. He said, "Well, now you're going to have to get a jock strap." What's a jock strap? But we got that settled.
Well, great. That's funny. Well, between high school and college, how would you contrast that?
Well, in high school, I was I'd say a power wrestler, coupled with some finesse, but not, most of it was
just let me at them.
I was a tack dog.
Yeah.
And I trained hard, worked hard, and never out of shape. I would eat anything and everything up to midnight before I started wrestling, and then I quit. Cold turkey. Yeah. Training 100%. No Cokes. No fried foods, and no cookies or cakes or anything. Everything went. It was just high, good food and hard training. And so I learned that early from my coach. He went on a blackboard at the beginning when we first met. These you do. You want to be a champ. These you do. These you don't do. You don't drink alcohol, and you don't smoke, and you don't, it goes on down all this fad foods and stuff over here.
Donuts and Coca-Cola.
All that. Oh, man. You couldn't have, you'd had to pour Coke down my throat and hold me during all my career.
Sure.
That's just the way it was. I got started good. Good coaching, and that set me on the right path of always being in shape.
And then as you went into college, did your style change, or did you?
My style changed in college because I was suddenly faced with a totally different philosophy. Although the guy that taught me in high school came out of that same philosophy, he didn't really grasp it as much as could have been.
Okay.
And if you can imagine in your mind, this is what it was based upon. And the old coach would say, if a bull could, if muscles were everything, then a bull could catch a rabbit. And we practiced being the rabbit. So bring on the bulls, we'll outsmart the bulls. And so it was built on basically leverage, physics really a lot. I learned a lot of, he didn't have physics lessons or anything, but he just taught us this. So it was movement, a lot of movement.
But you integrated it from what you knew from physics.
I integrated it with what I knew, and then I was able, because of his teaching, he was a good educator. He taught me how to teach myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so based upon that philosophy, then I developed past him, past what he taught. You know, just like in my teaching, I've got kids that are doing things, that have done things that I didn't teach them because they can develop.
Okay.
And that was the difference.
That's good to know. It's to see that development. And then going into Olympic trials, as you transitioned from the Oklahoma State team, tell us a little bit about that and how that led up to your winning the Olympics.
I went back my senior year. I had been hurt my sophomore year in college, and I missed that year. So I only wrestled 2 years of competition. And my coach put in for a hardship case for that 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they denied me. So I came back to school. My coach says to me, now this is how I decided to go to the Olympics, or decided to try out. My coach says to me, since you're going to be here, why don't you help me? And why don't you try for the Olympics? He said, you can make the team at 136.5 pounds. And I thought, Olympics? Never thought about that. That's a good idea. This was September of 1959, and the Olympic trials were like 6 months away.
6 months.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between Olympic freestyle and the college.
Yeah, it was freestyle and Greco both. And I just, that's a right there, which I can talk to you later about the full thing if you want. But I didn't wrestle 136.5, and that's a story in itself. I wrestled 147.
Okay, so you went up a.
I went up the weight where I'd never lost. I only lost 2 times, and that was at 37.
Gotcha.
137, and I was coming down from about 160. And my coach never believed that I was a 47-pounder, although I went two full years undefeated at 147. I don't know where he got it, but anyway, he didn't believe I was a 47-pounder and was very upset at me for going to 147 instead of 136.5. So he just kind of figured I was goofing off, and he just kind of blew me off, as far as thinking that he figured I'd go into trials and I'd get beat and come home. And but I felt like because I'm a Christian,
mm-hmm.
I seek guidance outside myself and from wise people, and I actually prayed about what I should do, whether I should go to 136.5 or go to 147, and I just felt a complete peace about going at 147.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is when I made my decision. I'm going to go 147, and it was almost like the confidence just rose up, and let's go, 147. And so I stuck with it, and that's where I landed.
That's where you landed. And how did you get onto the freestyle team?
Well, you had to go through. You had to go to a district qualifying tournament.
Mm-hmm.
You had to place first or second in that tournament, which qualified you. There were 12 of those districts, and so they would end up with 24 guys in each weight.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they wanted. And you could go to a qualifying tournament, and they were, some of them, not very strong. Both the tournaments that I went to were not very strong. One of them was held in my home high school. And my little brother had just won the state championship and at 130, and he was up to 147. He was going to try out just for kicks. And a very amusing thing happened. We had a guy that came out for wrestling at Oklahoma State, and he really wasn't recruited, or he's just a walk-on, and he wasn't that good. But my little brother had him beaten, but he didn't know anything about freestyle, and it was a quick fall. If you just touch your shoulders, you were pinned. Well, he did that, and my brother got pinned.
Yeah.
So I'm a kind of a jokester, and so the next day we're looking at the lineup as to who's going to wrestle who. No, that day, at the end of that day. And he was standing next to me, and I looked up there and I said, "Oh, we're going to wrestle tomorrow." And I said, "You beat my little brother today, didn't you?" And I got real serious. I said, "You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to rip your head off tomorrow." And I tell you what, it scared him so bad he didn't even show up.
You sound like Muhammad Ali.
And I was just joking around.
Oh, you're joking.
I was just joking around with him, you know. And he just cut out. He didn't show up.
He cut out.
But I placed first in that one, which qualified me to go to the. And I went to another tournament just to try to get some experience.
Sure.
Because I had not wrestled since the Nationals in April or February in 1959. So
Okay.
I'd been out
So the year before.
I hadn't 59. It had been March, April, May, June, July, August, September, over about 7 months. I hadn't even been on a mat, hadn't done anything in wrestling. So then I have these two little dinky tournaments, really. And we go to Ames, Iowa, qualify. And if you place 1, 2, or 3 in that, it qualifies you for a training camp.
Right.
Which I qualified for the training camp. And I decided to hang around for the Greco, because if you place in the freestyle and the Greco, you could, in the training camp, you could do both. Doesn't mean you could wrestle both, but you could try out for the team for both, you know. And that's what I did. Qualified for both, which qualified me for the training camp, which was held in August.
Okay.
Just before the Olympics in September. It was held in August, and which was the first time that we'd had that type of a training camp. And so that was the first step of getting to the Olympics. And then I made the Olympic team in Greco-Roman. We trained a week, and then we had trials, and then the last week we worked out.
Okay.
So we had the Olympic Greco trials were first. I beat the guy off that had placed first. I beat him twice, so that put me on the Greco team. Mm-hmm. But that's not what I really. That was a kind of a backup for me. Mm-hmm. You know, make sure I went to Rome.
Sure.
So then I tried out for the freestyle team next, and I made the freestyle team and put him back on the. He was in my corner the whole time. You know?
So put him back on the Greco team.
Put him back on the Greco team and went freestyle.
Amazing. And then taking the plane over to Rome, can you tell us what would be, it's a neat little story because it wasn't just like playing the basketball championship. It's a sort of a nuance from what you've told me. We're talking about the end. You didn't win and then you win the gold medal. It was someone had to wrestle after you.
Well, there was 23 or 24 guys in my weight class, as different countries had different numbers. And the point system, it changes wrestling is one of the worst sports in the world for changing the rules.
I see.
Every time you turn around, they're changing the rules. Every 4 years, they change the rules. And they've done this for years. And the way it was in 1960 was that you had everybody in the weight class. They just throw you in there. And they don't look at the last 4 years ago if there was a guy that won the Olympics
Sure.
or a world champion. The world champion was from the Soviet Union. And he was expected to win the Olympics.
Gotcha.
He or the Japanese, because the Japanese had beaten him the year before, and then he had won the world title. So they were sort of like, one of us is supposed to win this thing. They didn't they didn't even look at me. I mean, I'm a dumb farm kid
It's
from
like
Oklahoma.
the first and second seeds, like Wimbledon.
Well, there was no seats. They just put you in there.
I see.
Those guys could have wrestled right off, but they didn't.
But I mean, in the sense of they're the expected finalists.
Yeah, they were expected to, one of them, come out.
Right.
And so we wrestled. I had five matches that I actually wrestled. I had 6 rounds, but one round I was at the odd man, so it was a bye. And what you do is if you win by a fall, which means your shoulders are, when you're in the match is over, the point system says you get 0.
Okay.
So you are gaining points the worse you do. Okay, the next, they considered winning, you win, you get 1 point against you. If you draw, you get 2 points against you. If you lose by decision, you get 3 points against you. And if you lose by a fall, you get 4.
So it's like golf scoring in a way.
And when those add up to 6, they scratch you. You're out.
Gotcha.
So you could lose twice, and as long as you didn't have 6, you're still in.
Gotcha.
If you got beat and you got 3 against you, and you came back and pinned Terry McCann, our 125-pounder, lost, and he came back and pinned 2 world champions and won the Olympics. He just had a bad day, and the next day he comes back and he pins these guys, and he gets 0-0. So he stayed, and he won. I had five matches, and I had 5 decisions. I had bad knees, so I couldn't put the legs on, use the legs. I had to. It's an interesting philosophy that how I ended up wrestling was what. I have to say this because this is nobody. If I'd had asked, being as unknowing of the style. I mean, I got a rule book. I had to get a rule book and
Sure.
see what the rules were. And then I adapted everything I knew to that. I didn't change anything. I didn't learn any new moves. I did not change a thing. I adapted everything to those rules. And the reason I did was I didn't have anybody to tell me anything. And again, I said, Lord, I need a plan. I need a plan. Basically, that's all I and this plan began to formulate in my mind. And it was perfect what you know and blow off what you don't know.
Gotcha.
And I perfected my takedowns, which was what I was good at. And I perfected bottom position defense. Top position, I did nothing. I didn't want to get caught, the legs in or doing something. Those guys they would pin you from bottom. We had one of our best guys that pinned from bottom. So I would take the guy down, I'd maneuver where I'd cut him loose and he'd get up, and I'd take him down again. I didn't wrestle with him on the mat at all. I always had him in my corner. Make him wrestle my way. He had to wrestle me. And you didn't have to get up. If I took you down, you didn't have to get up. And I could get penalized if I just got off of you. So I would ease up a little bit, and most guys in their right mind will get up. And Fortunately, they all did. And I just worked takedowns. That's how I scored all my points, takedowns. Except with the Japanese, I got 2 points for tilt points. You get his shoulders close to the man, you get, I did that, I don't even know. I took him down, one of the takedowns, he got 2 points against him. But that was basically one match. It was. I hesitate to say it easy tournament, but in modern days, wrestling the way they do, it was an easy tournament.
I see.
Because they really respected the sport, and so they respected the people in the sport, and they allowed you to recover. And it's like having a boxing match or something, and then you got to have another one right afterwards. That's what they do today in wrestling. Whereas they just work it and they just make you come right back. Whereas in those days, we had one a day. We had 5 days of competition. I had 5 matches. If you couldn't do that, you better go home anyway.
Exactly. You know? Well, tell us about your gold medal day.
Well,
and where you were in Rome, and what kind of day it was, and the crowd. And...
It was a hot, sunshiny day, and we wrestled outside. And so help me, I can't remember the exact name. I keep
it was
mispronouncing. It was
near the Colosseum, wasn't it?
It was across the street and down just a little bit from the old Roman Colosseum. It was the it was the ruins of an old pagan church.
Oh, a basilica.
Basilica.
Right.
It was a basilica, and it had 3 archways, had stones and everything, and they put the 3 mats in those archways, and bleachers behind, and that's where we wrestled. And you walked. They had the mats raised approximately 3-4 feet, and you walked up a little stairs and onto the mat, and that was the facility which we wrestled. They didn't have to build anything.
And who was your the last match?
Well, the last 2 matches are really the ones that were the 2 toughest guys.
So you had 2 in one day.
The last 3 were the last guy. The 2 before that were the 2 toughest guys supposedly there. Ended up being there was 3. Now the first 2 I wrestled, I didn't have any trouble at all.
Okay.
You know. Then the third guy I wrestled was the Japanese
wrestler.
He had beaten the Russian, and I had to wrestle the Japanese, and then the Russian, then the Iranian.
Okay.
So those 3 were the next. You know, the Japanese was very aggressive. Everybody else I wrestled was defensive. He was the only aggressive wrestler. My style, let's say this, my style of wrestling made it easier for me if he was aggressive.
Because you leverage him, right?
Well, I did a lot of things. My moves would work better on a guy that was aggressive.
Right.
And I don't have time to go through all the moves, but I was able, because of his aggressiveness, and he just kept coming, and I was able to like take him down 8 times. And that was like, you know, in those days you weren't taking guys down 8 times, and I got a tilt with him and made it 10. He got 2 on me. He got 10 and 2. He got the tilt somewhere. I don't know. This was like accidental too. And so then the Russian is next. Well, I didn't know anything about any of these guys I wrestled. I never read any clippings. Terry McCann and Doug Blueball, who both won gold medals. Doug Blueball, who was from my hometown, and we wrestled together at high school and college. They came to me and they said, you know, you got the Russian worried. I said, why? He said, you know, he won the world title last year, and that guy you just whipped on beat him. And then he came back and won the world title. So psychologically, you've got him. You've got him worried. You've got him worried. And I think I beat him, and I think he was worried. I think that it helped him. Helped me.
Yeah.
He was more wary of me than he would have been, and but his best stuff didn't work.
Gotcha.
And then I had the last match was with the Iranian.
And what was his name?
His name was Tajiki.
Tajiki?
Tajiki, yeah. Mustafa Tajiki. And he was one of their good guys, but they didn't. The Iranians always have good teams.
Yeah, they have a history for that.
Yeah, but they didn't show up in that Olympics. We were second behind Turkey, and we won 3 golds. They won 4, and Germany won 1. The guy that won the gold medal from Germany was a heavyweight who wrestled and won and was still wrestling in 1972.
Wow.
I mean, he was still at it. This guy was tough.
That's amazing.
He was tough. And the Iranian had a style. I won't go into that. But anyway, I was able to beat him. But it wasn't over for me. That was my last match, but it could have been not my last match because the Korean and the Bulgarian were both left in the tournament still to wrestle.
Yes.
Now, the Russian had beaten the Bulgarian. If the Bulgarian pinned the Korean, then I had to come back on the next match and wrestle him. If the Korean pinned the Bulgarian, I had to wrestle him. Because they both had 5 points against them, it had to be a fall. One of them had to pin the other guy. It ended up where the Bulgarian beat him up pretty bad, but he couldn't pin him. So those guys were scratched, and I had won the Olympics based on the last match with the Iranian.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
And then you've told me before, your mother was there.
Yeah, my mom, some of the folks, Doug Bluebaugh's uncle, got a fund going for people to kind of help out and send both mothers to the Olympics.
That's great.
And my mother, I lost in the state 3 times. She saw me. She didn't see me lose in the nationals, but she had never been there, and then she gets to see me win the Olympics.
That's great for your mom to see you win the Olympic medal.
She had to see me win the Olympics.
Now, you were gold, and the silver and bronze were
the Russian and the
Japanese.
No, the Japanese placed. He placed. Let's see. It was gold, silver, and bronze. The bronze was, I thought it was, it could have been the Bulgarian, maybe.
Bulgarian.
Sure.
Well, I can put that list to the link on your match.
If you look it up, you can see it.
I can put that on the description.
Yeah.
Well, fabulous. Well, that was a glorious day to win a gold medal after all of that.
Yeah, it was. It was, but the preparation for that didn't just happen in 1959 and 60.
Sure.
It happened from the 7th grade up. And that's when I try to tell kids, you can't just get ready overnight. And you have to. I was looking at one of the Psalms the other day, and David was asking God for something, and he said, "Give me an undivided heart." And I got to thinking about that, and that's what it takes.
You got to be really focused.
You got to be focused. You've got to be focused, and doesn't mean that you can't do other things, but you can't let that other things interfere.
Right. It has to be your primary focus.
And when I tried out, I decided that year, until it was settled, I had no other focus. And that's what I focused on.
Well, thank you, Shelby. We will pick up in Chapter 2. Thank you very much. We will take a short break, and we will start in Chapter 2 with Shelby Wilson. Welcome back to Chapter 2 of the Omnibus Show. Today's guest is Olympic champion Shelby Wilson. And Shelby, you were telling us about your Olympic gold medal day. What did the Olympics do for you? And what does it take to be an Olympian?
Well, I'd say the main thing that the Olympics did was to give me a platform. Mm-hmm. I was a kind of person, when I started wrestling in high school, my high school coach told me, if you had not wrestled, you would have gone through the whole school system and no one would have known your name. I was a very quiet, non-participating youngster. Mm-hmm. Grew up on a farm. I was satisfied, go home and do my chores, we worked. I learned to drive a truck when I was 9 and things like that, Wrestling gave me an identity that I would never have known. And to win a gold medal increased that identity to beyond my greatest expectations. I am humbled by the honor because it has given me an entree into the lives of so many people, and especially kids. And I'm a firm believer in that if you are a person of prominence of any kind, and people look to you, you have a great responsibility. And that responsibility is to do the right thing and lead people who are watching you in the right direction. Now, I know that not everybody believes that, especially the people that are there, because you can see around and you see they don't. They don't follow that.
Gotcha.
But mothers and fathers like to see people leading their kids in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And that's been part of my life. Coaching and teaching and just working with kids and people. I feel a heavy responsibility, and especially because of that gold medal. And I still have kids coming to my house, and their dads that I coached bring them to their house, and they want to get their picture taken holding the gold medal. That's a very humbling thing to have that and to feel that you were given that opportunity. Mm-hmm. Man, that is heavy to me, and it's glorious to be able to. I don't need the pats on the back. I don't care about that. Winning a gold medal is plenty for me. I don't need somebody to tell me how great I am and all that. But when kids look to you and you say something to them that might change them, might help them, that's what's important to me. Mm-hmm. And what it takes, I think that is the question that no one could ever answer. Because how do you explain the great things that individuals have done and others who have trained just as hard as they were that could never reach that? Mm-hmm. How do you explain that? There's no explanation to explain how that happens. I'm sure that there are guys that I've worked with and guys that I wrestled with that trained as hard as I did. I do know one thing. They didn't train harder. I know that. Okay. I made sure of that I've never wrestled or been around anybody that trained harder. Now, I won't say I trained harder than anybody else because I don't know what's in all their hearts, but I do know that I was never out-trained. And that gives you confidence. Gives you confidence and when you tell kids, I've coached, and the only thing I ever required of a kid is reach your potential. Give me your best. You give me their best, and it's you don't place, you're still on my team. I'll still have you because that's all it takes. Give me your whole heart, you know? And I like I say, I ran across that, I think I mentioned this in the first session, but I ran across that verse about David saying, give me an undivided heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important. It really comes down to that you can't be doing 100 things and still be at your best at one thing.
You've got to want it.
You've got to want it, and you've got to focus on it, and you have to have an undivided heart. Really, when it gets down to it, you got to have a focused heart.
That's great. And can you tell us a little bit what you've done since then? What your story has been?
Well, I moved to Texas, and I worked down there with a guy who was I was in school with him, and he had started a youth organization. I worked with him for a few years. Met my wife down there in a church that I was working with some of the kids there,
mm-hmm.
and we were married in '62, and two of our daughters were born. Valerie was born 2 years later, and then Nancy came along, or Bonnie came along 2 years after that. And we then moved to Colorado, where I took the head coaching job at the University of Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there till I resigned, I think, in '74 to pursue. We had started a work there called the Stronghold Youth Foundation. And it was basically meeting needs that people had,
mm-hmm.
who maybe a widow lady that needed help and maybe didn't have the money. I'm good with my hands. I always liked to work with my hands. And so we started this organization just to meet needs of local people.
Mm-hmm. And
I got a hole in the roof. I fixed a roof, or they got a clogged toilet. I remember one time we had this widow lady that I was helping, and I was actually out of the country coaching a team over in Europe, and she called up and said her toilet was clogged and she needed me to come unclog it. And I thought, that's what you've got to be willing to do. Really.
Sure.
Really, when it gets down to it, you don't ever get above any job.
Right.
And she kept me humble. She didn't care if what I was doing, how great it sounded or anything.
Yeah.
But I need my toilet unclogged.
Yeah.
Well,
there you have it. Olympian plumber.
Yeah. Well, because of that, I've been able to do a lot of things with a lot of people.
Yes.
And this is where I met you, back when you were in college.
I was a college boy.
Out there at the camp.
At Indian University.
And we were doing the Stronghold Youth Foundation right then. We were working with college kids, and we shifted a little bit and started working with international college kids. And I even came up with the idea of having about 1984 to supply them with basic needs that they had in their apartments. And I've found different facilities to store things that people would give me: beds, tables, chairs. And I had one guy for 10 years who let me use a warehouse he had. And I had it full. I was hauling stuff to internationals, and they would get my name, they'd call me up, or email me from China sometimes, and from different countries in the world, and say, my friend told me that you maybe could help me, and I'll be there at a certain time, and I can have them ready to go, have a truckload of furniture for them. And that was great. And we're still doing it. I mean, I'm 86. I'm still doing it. I just loaded a truck the other day for international students, sent him to Chicago. Got a note back. made it fine, And
Well, that's fabulous. That's amazing. But you've also continued coaching or assisting.
I started coaching at Owen Valley High School in Spencer, just a few miles up. I coached there 20 years, junior high and high school. Not the entire 20 in junior high school, about half that in junior high school. But I coached junior high and high school there, along with Doug Jones, he was officially the coach. I was officially the assistant coach, but he let me do all the coaching and teaching, and he did everything else. He was the guy that he was on the computer. He furnished the kids with all statistics and took care of the filming and warm ups and preseason. And it was a great experience. He did what he was good at. I did what I was good at, and we got along great. And I loved it. We had a
That's
great
fabulous.
relationship.
Yeah.
And then when I finished there,
You've assisted, right?
well, I started going up and watching IU's practices and going over to North High School and different schools, and I'd go up to when Dwayne Goldman was
In
coaching
Bloomington.
In Bloomington, yeah, I'd go up there and enjoyed meeting the guys and giving them any advice that they wanted. I wasn't an official coach or anything, but I was able to work with some of their kids during those years. And one of those guys is now the coach at IU.
That's great.
Angel Escobedo. He's the coach there now, and I remember when he was there during that time.
Yeah.
And worked some with him. Not a lot, but I worked mostly with not everybody likes to work with heavyweights. I really enjoy working with heavyweights, not exclusively, but heavyweights don't have to have as much technique as the lower weights. And I had great success with those. And I've worked with several heavyweights there at IU and some of the high school kids.
That's
But I
fabulous.
just kind of shift around. I go over to Edgewood and I go to North High School, and I've even come up in Indianapolis area a couple of times and down to Bedford. And I enjoy meeting the kids, encouraging the kids, seeing them at tournaments, and they come up and say hi. Good to see you, and their parents appreciate the fact that you're interested in their kids, and
Yeah.
that's kind of a
An Olympian gold medalist helping a kid out in high school, I would think would just be tremendous. That would, if I was in high school, that would really fill me with a lot of encouragement, and it'd give me a lot of confidence.
Well, I have had to come to realize that.
Yeah.
You really need to come to the point of realizing it's not for you, it's for him.
Yeah.
It's for those kids.
Yes.
And you pat them on the back, you give them a little word. It's not for you.
Sure.
It's for them.
For them.
Knowing your position, knowing that you are a gold medal winner, and that how that kid feels that a gold medal winner is talking to me.
Yes.
I've had to come to that because that takes it's a kind of a balancing act where you don't, your ego is not on display. You really are thinking about the other person rather than yourself.
Well, that is incredible that you're doing that for these young students who've got great potential. So to conclude, how would you say you were passing on your legacy?
Well, I married a great gal. She was a teacher. She spent most of her life. Her dad was a geologist, so she moved around a lot, but she spent most of her years in Texas. And I have 3 daughters. And those 3 daughters have, well, backing up a little bit, the wrestling coach at Ponca City High School back 1960, let's see, what year was it? 60 years after the Olympics. It was the 60th anniversary
would that be
of the Olympics.
2020?
Yeah, 2020. He got a thing going, and they got a committee going, and they wanted to honor Doug Bluebaugh and myself at the high school, the 60th, because nothing had ever been done. So
at Ponca City High School.
At Ponca City. So he got this going, and people responded very well. And so they have a whole section, the north side of the mezzanine of our new high school gymnasium. It's a beautiful place. And they put up a statue of him on one end and the one on me and all of our little area there, which was a great honor.
That's great.
And then I said, I'd like to be remembered for more than just being a wrestler. And my daughters came up with the idea of a legacy, leaving more of a legacy. So they have done all the work. Valerie and Bonnie and Nancy, they're scattered everywhere, but computers have really helped a lot where they've been in contact with the school and all. And we have set up a scholarship. We give a sizable scholarship to a kid each year, not necessarily based on a 4.0 or anything or going to a major university. It's geared for the kid that just wants to get any kind of future education and go on. Could be a welder, go to tech school, be a nurse, be whatever it is, but they're going to have to pay for it to get the education. We want to help them. So we're going to give that every year, and it's sort of a way that we can, it's called the Shelby and Gretchen Wilson Scholarship. I'm thinking about trying to bring in the whole Wilson family in on it and say the Wilson Scholarship. I'm throwing that around in my mind rather than just having, But the reason I want my name on it is that I want to be known more than just a wrestler, but someone that's reaching out to people and, had a little more of a purpose than just wrestling.
Well, that's a great legacy to have.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Shelby. It's great having you here today.
It's been a pleasure. I really enjoy this type of atmosphere.
Yeah, it was good.
It's great.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your story.
Thank you, Dave.
Great to have you here. Well, that's it for today's episode of the Omnibus Show with Shelby Wilson. We'd like to thank our sponsor, the Hotel Carmichael. We're shooting here today at Feinstein's, and we look forward to being with you on our next episode of the Omnibus Show.
If you enjoyed this program, please like, share, and subscribe to continue the conversation. For the Omnibus Show newsletter, please sign up at theomnibusshow.com.